The night he said it was loud, bright, and crowded with people who believed they already knew who mattered. Crystal chandeliers hung over the ballroom like frozen fireworks, scattering light across polished shoes and satin dresses. It was a charity gala in downtown Chicago, the kind where names were currency and confidence passed for character. I stood near a high table with a glass of water, listening more than speaking, comfortable in the background. I had learned long ago that silence was useful. He didn't recognize me at first. That was the funny part. Mark Ellison was holding court near the stage, jacket unbuttoned, laugh practiced, voice pitched just right to fill the room without shouting. He had the look of a man who had memorized success from magazines, tailored suit, expensive watch, eyes always scanning for someone more important. We'd met briefly weeks earlier through a mutual acquaintance, but I hadn't given him much to remember. I wore a simple navy suit, no logo, no flash. My hair was neat, my shoes clean, my posture relaxed. To Mark, that meant one thing. Nothing. Someone asked what I did for work. It was an innocent question, the kind that floats around rooms like this. Before I could answer, Mark stepped in with a grin that cut just a little too sharp. "He's between opportunities," he said, loud enough for a circle of people to hear. "Basically jobless." There was a pause, the kind that feels longer because everyone is deciding how to react. A few chuckles followed, polite and uncomfortable. Someone raised their eyebrows. Another person looked down at their drink. Mark smiled wider, enjoying the small rush of approval that comes from putting someone else beneath you. I felt the heat rise in my chest, but I didn't flinch. Years ago, that comment would have burned. Years ago, I might have tried to explain myself, to prove something. But experience had taught me patience. Truth had a way of arriving on its own, and when it did, it landed harder than any argument. "I'm not jobless," I said calmly. "I just don't talk about work much." Mark laughed again. "Must be nice," he said. "Some of us actually have responsibilities." That stung more, not because it was clever, but because it was careless. I nodded, took a sip of water, and let it go. The moment passed. Music swelled. The crowd shifted. Mark moved on to someone else, already forgetting me. The gala continued, speeches and applause rolling on schedule. When the host announced a short presentation about the evening's main sponsor, I paid closer attention. The company being honored was Ellison Technologies, Mark's pride and joy. He had built his reputation there, or so he believed. The logo flashed on the screen, sleek and blue, accompanied by a summary of innovation and growth. I felt a familiar mix of irony and restraint settle in. Years earlier, when Ellison Technologies was struggling, when banks were hesitant and investors cautious, my family office had stepped in quietly. We specialized in buying undervalued companies with solid fundamentals and fixing what was broken behind the scenes. No press releases, no ego, just work. Over time, through layered acquisitions and strategic restructuring, we had become the majority owner. The board answered to us. The final decisions crossed my desk. Mark knew none of that. To him, ownership meant visibility. It meant his name on emails and plaques. He was the CEO, the face, the man on stage. But faces change. Paper doesn't. When the presentation ended, the host announced a surprise. "Tonight," she said, "we're also welcoming a new board representative who will be working closely with Ellison Technologies moving forward." I felt eyes turn, curious but unfocused. The host read my name. There was a ripple through the room. Subtle but real. Whispers started, questions passed in murmurs. I stepped forward, walking to the stage with the same steady pace I used for everything else. The lights were warm, the microphone cool in my hand. I didn't look for Mark right away. I spoke to the room. "Good evening," I said. "I'm honored to be here and proud to support the work this company does. Growth doesn't happen overnight, and it doesn't happen alone. It takes patience, trust, and a willingness to listen." I paused, then added, "I look forward to working with the leadership team." Polite applause followed. I thanked the host and stepped down. That's when I saw him. Mark's face had lost its color. His smile was gone, replaced by something brittle and confused. He stared at me like a man rereading a sentence that had suddenly changed meaning. As I passed him, our eyes met. For a moment, he said nothing. Then, quietly, "What is this?" "Work," I replied. He followed me away from the crowd, his confidence unraveling with each step. Near a quieter corner, he stopped. "You didn't tell me," he said. "Any of this. You didn't ask," I said. "You assumed." He ran a hand through his hair. "You own a controlling share," I said, keeping my voice even. "Yes." The word landed between us like dropped glass. He swallowed. "So when you said you weren't jobless, I wasn't lying." Silence stretched. Around us, the party continued, unaware or pretending not to notice. Mark's shoulders sagged slightly, the weight of realization settling in. He looked smaller without the spotlight. "I didn't mean anything by it," he said finally. "It was just a joke." I studied him, not with anger, but with clarity. "Jokes reveal things," I said. "So do rooms like this." He nodded, ashamed now. "I'm sorry." I accepted the apology with a simple nod. Not because he deserved forgiveness immediately, but because carrying resentment would have cost me more than it cost him. I turned to leave, but he stopped me. "Why didn't you say something earlier?" he asked. I considered the question. "Because respect that's forced isn't respect," I said. "And truth doesn't need an introduction." The weeks that followed were different. Board meetings replaced galas. Data replaced laughter. Mark was competent, I'll give him that, but he was no longer careless. He listened more. He spoke less. The shift wasn't dramatic, but it was real. Word spread, as it always does. People who had laughed that night suddenly remembered my name. Invitations arrived. So did assumptions. I treated them all the same. One afternoon, after a long meeting, Mark lingered. "You know," he said, "that night changed things for me." "How so?" "I realized how easy it is to mistake quiet for weakness," he said. "And how dangerous that can be." I nodded. "Most people learn that too late." He smiled, a genuine one this time. "I won't forget it." Neither would I. Not because of the insult, but because of the reminder. Power doesn't announce itself. Ownership doesn't brag. And the people who matter most in the room are often the ones watching, waiting, and choosing their moment. In the end, the story wasn't about revenge or humiliation. It was about patience. About letting assumptions collapse under the weight of truth. And about understanding that respect, once lost, is far harder to earn than it ever was to give.